I returned from my first YCS. Hey guys, Otak here, back with another video, and I have officially just gotten home from my first YCS at YCS Orlando, and I figured let's just do a recap. Unlike past recap videos, I'm usually like down in the dumps, but honestly, even though I didn't get my invite at this YCS, I'm kind of like ready to just jump into the next competition because I just got really pumped simply because of just honestly how well I actually did do at this YCS. For those who are already subscribed to the channel, you already know how I did at the YCS because I was uploading a new short after every round. I was X1 until round 7, and then at round 7, 8, and 9 ended up losing and choking it out. The exhaustion of just the day really kind of got to me. 9 rounds of Swiss is kind of a lot. And I just started making a lot of misplays towards the end there that just pretty much costed me day 2. My first loss was in round 4 to a gentleman named Dave, who did end up getting top 32 with his Cash Fiendsmith build, which we will talk about in a minute. But there will be a link to his channel and his video that he made on the deck list in the description below, so definitely check him out. But let's talk about the YCS. So day 1, me and my buddy Tyler, we show up on Friday that morning, and it's just a 4-hour drive from my house, so we just drove the morning up. We didn't have to fly or anything like that. And we show up, and we're still pretty early. They haven't opened the doors, so we just chilling in like the lobby of the event center, testing, talking to some random people. And, you know, then once we get in, we get registered, we open our packs. I opened like 3 high rarity cards, and they were all worth fuck all nothing. Again, the short is on the channel if you want to check that out. And then from there, I immediately jumped over to the vendor, found a collector's rare Red Ransom, which was the only Link monster I didn't have in collector's rare yet, so I obviously scooped that up. The vendors were heavily overcharging for a lot of these cards. And I'm assuming it was just because it was a YCS and they know people are going to buy these cards regardless, because at a regional, the vendor is a little more generous. And then from there, like, the day was like pretty chill. I played like the little dual terminal machine and got a couple of cards. One of the cards, they had like trap cards in there that had like 1 free pack or 1 free box written on them. And so, you know, you were lucky if you got one of those trap cards, and I ended up getting one. I got a free pack of Supreme Darkness, which I ended up opening Dead End Prison from, which was pretty cool. He's like a $13 card. And then we proceeded to meet up with the rest of our friends. We made sure everyone had everything they needed. I think we played some like random test games here and there. And then from there, we just immediately jumped to go get food. There were 9 of us in total in terms of my friend group that we all went, and so we ended up going to like this Korean barbecue hot pot place. I had never been to a hot pot. That was pretty cool. Overall, like I think I had my fill. I think I had like 4 or 5 bowls of food, and everyone was just kind of like, he's getting up again. What is he doing? But you know, a $50 food bill, I'm getting my fill. And then we proceeded to all meet up at my buddy London's Airbnb. And that's where we pretty much hanged out for the rest of the night. We got some like last minute testing in. I only got a couple of games in because the person I was testing with had to take a phone call. But overall, like, I was going into day 1 pretty confident. So day 1, we wake up early. We get there like 20 minutes early. We want to be ready to go when the doors open. And yeah, just the fun immediately started and did not stop until we left the building. My rounds were pretty, like, good. Like, I felt really good with every round, even after my first loss. But I went up against Sprite round 1, Ryzeal Fiendsmith round 2, Runic Stun round 3, and then round 4, where I got my first loss, was against Kashtira Fiendsmith. Rounds 5 and 6 were both the mirror match with Malice. I'm very well versed in the mirror match because of how much practice I've had against it, just because my buddies also play Malice. So I was very familiar on what actually to interact with, what to stop, but also like in terms of like what to side in, not just Lancia, but like what to prepare for. Round 7, like I said, this is really where like the exhaustion started to kick in. I also was probably going into this a little cocky because again, I was only X1 going into round 7. I had 3 more rounds. I just had to win them out. And round 7, I'm up against Ryzeal Fiendsmith again, and I win the die roll. I play right into Nibiru, which is something I was avoiding doing all tournament. So just playing into it now was like, ugh. And then game 2, I again played into Nibiru. I just, again, the exhaustion was really getting to me. I was tired. I wasn't thinking about my plays. I was just rushing. We're getting close to time in game 2, and I have the ability to draw this out, and I just fumbled it. I went white binder, banish the cryptor and the ransom. Cryptor and ransom come back. I'm at like 200 life points. Cryptor's at 5k, but I swing and we calculate as if it's at 2500 because I'm not thinking. And then I go Cryptor effect to banish itself, and I go effect to bring it back, and my opponent goes, "You've already done that." And I'm like, "You're right, I have already done that." And then they just call time in the round. I, again, had the ability to draw that out and, you know, go into round 8 with X11. Round 8 was, again, another Ryzeal Fiendsmith. I bricked both games, and then I only had like one real playable card, which was Dormouse in game 2, and they had the Lancia, so, you know, lost there. And then round 9, I was already X3 at this point, so even if I had the ability to sliver into day 2, I wasn't gonna top. But I was like, it's my first YCS, I might as well just end out day 1 with the final round and just say that I walked away X3. No, I went against Ryzeal Mitsurugi and proceeded to get my ass handed to me because I have no practice against Mitsurugi. So day 1, and pretty much for the main event of YCS, I went out with X4. Not that great of a record, however, it did take to round 7 to get there. So I feel pretty good that I made it that far, whereas a lot of people who say like, oh, this is my first YCS, most of them probably are X2 by like, I don't know, maybe around 4 or 5 is what a lot of my friends have been, telling me who have been to YCSs. So I felt pretty good just coming out of that with, saying that I got into round 7 X1. I also was getting just a lot of compliments from not only my opponents, but random spectators that I was navigating the deck very well. I was very pleased with my deck build. There were a couple of moments where it failed me, but like that's just kind of variance at that point. But overall, like I was really happy with how I played at this YCS, and I think that's like really the takeaway, especially since I didn't, top. Going into day 2, we considered just not going day 2 and just like, I don't know, doing stuff. We're in Orlando. There's plenty of shit to do, like Universal, Disney, or just random places in Universal. There was stores and like shops and all these cool little tourist attractions. And like, I've been to Orlando once, but I was in high school at the time. So a lot's changed, and considered doing that, but I was like, I want to do the regional flights. I want to see if I can still get my invite. Sure enough, what we do, regional flight number 1, because I did 2. Regional flight number 1, I got my ass handed to me round 3. So that sucked. I don't even remember what did me in, to be honest. But regional flight number 2, I made it to the finals, and I lost. The deck that ended up doing me in was Ryzeal Fiendsmith. I know, shocker, right? We didn't have dice, so we did a coin flip, and I win the coin flip, and my opening hand is a Bestial Serenir, an Ash Blossom, a Nibiru, an Imperm, and a Template Skipper. Where are my Malice monsters? I just set the Imperm, I pass. My thought process is I have Ash for Requiem, I have Imperm for Duo Drive, I have Nibiru if things get too out of hand before Cross hits the board. I'm still feeling decently confident. My opponent proceeds to do Fiendsmith shit. I don't Ash the Requiem. Again, I was tired. Just day 1 took a lot out of me, and I just wasn't thinking. And so I let the Requiem resolve with Ash Blossom in hand. He goes Lacrima effect, and that's where I decide to hit him with Ash Blossom. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Sure enough, Talents hits the board, and he swipes the Nibiru out of my hand. He proceeds to do plays. He makes Chaos Angel to banish the Infinite Impermanence. So I'm just sitting there with my dick in my hand, just like, okay, this is fine. And so I just, before he goes full combo, I'm just like, we'll just go game 2. Game 2, Lancia in the draw phase. Awesome. and all I'm looking at is only Malice names. Sick. And so I'm just like, yeah, you got it, man. We proceeded to just kind of hang out at the event center while we were waiting for our buddies to wrap up their regional flights, but also one of our friends was still in the main event. He was on day 2. Unfortunately, he did really good, but unfortunately he did not make it to top cut. But we were just waiting for our other friends to finish their regional flights while we were hanging out. I went to the vendor, sold some cards I no longer needed because they weren't getting, no one was picking them up at locals. And with that credit, ended up picking up 2 copies of Molcharmy Perulia because it is very good in the Rizio matchup. Because if they just play into it, you're drawing like at least 4 or 5 cards. So I decided to it was time I picked up that card. It's only like $40 right now, so I think it was a good card to pick up at the time. Fua's a different story, especially with it being in Stampede. That does not bode well for its longevity in the current format. It's probably gonna get hit after Stampede comes out, but that's a video for a different day. All right, so there's 2 deck lists I want to talk about. One is, of course, my own, which we'll save for the end, but I want to also talk about Dave's. And if you want more explanation on the reason he built his deck the way he did, like tech choices, side deck choices, again, I will put a link to the video in the description below. But this is the gentleman that beat me in round 4. He ended up getting all the way up to top 32. He was 3rd from Swiss. So overall, he did like really well. And again, congratulations, Dave, for making top 32. So it is, for the most part, your average run-of-the-mill Kashtira Fiendsmith. We are seeing Kashtira cards, Fiendsmith cards, and a metric fuck ton of hand traps. We're seeing Ash Blossom, Effect Veiler, Fuala, so you can draw those. We're seeing Imperm. We're seeing Nibiru. We're seeing the whole 9 yards. We're seeing 3 Bestials, which in a deck like this is essentially a hand trap. It's not just extension like in Malice. We're still seeing the 1 Luri, the 3 Engraver. He's running 3 Lacrima because you want to see your Fiendsmith cards. The 2 Tracked. The cool thing I thought was like 2 Planet. I was not expecting the 2nd planet, but then again, I'm not overly familiar with this deck, so maybe that is just normal. 3 Talents. Talents is just crazy, this format, so obviously. His extra deck was really interesting. So, like, we're seeing the 2 Desiree and the 2 Requiem, because if he ends up going against, like, the mirror match with Unicorn, he wants to make sure that Requiem or Desiree does not disappear. But the 2 Desiree also makes it so that way you can make Desiree for your end board, but also still send it off of Paradise if you don't open it. So just overall really powerful. Obviously the Lancias for the Malice hate, the Meows for the Malice hate, but also this is kind of good against like Fiendsmith stuff. Droll was really good in this current format. 3D barrier, which means he's not running Thrust, which was interesting. Strike, I saw this a lot at YCS Orlando. Strike is really good this format to side in going first. This card is actually just crazy. It's good against like Malice, obviously. But also it's good to like stop like random hand traps if you get further into the game. We're then still seeing like the typical Fiendsmith stuff. So we're seeing Necro Quip, we're seeing Caesar, Agnum Day, Requiem, Sequence, Moon. And then we are seeing the Little Knight still, but Lina, I love that he's playing Lina. Lina is a card that I wanted to fit into Malice, but we don't play nearly enough light monsters to make it work, because I really just wanted to be able to summon this and like take their Engraver or something out of their graveyard, or just take like a Detonator out of their graveyard so I have a 3k body on the board. I really wanted to run this, but we don't run enough light monsters in Malice to make it work. We would have to go into like Firewall Dragon, so we'd have to commit like a bunch of bodies just to put a Lina on the board. It's not worth it. We are seeing the Stellar Ptolemy M7. I didn't remember, I don't remember the reasoning why he put this in here, other than the fact that it's just like really easy to make. So definitely check out his video in the link description below for his like main reasoning for running this. It is a good card though. And then we are seeing Zeus because he's playing other Xyz monsters. And we are seeing Typhon. Typhon also performed very well at the YCS Orlando, constantly just being summoned to stop like Mitsurugi cards or even just Detonator from using its effect and then just bounce that shit. But yeah, overall, like, really good list. Again, Dave, congratulations for making top 32. All right, now let's talk about my YCS Orlando list. I liked the list. There's a couple of complaints I have, and I will, of course, explain my choices. I don't own Fuelos, and until the end of day 2, I did not own even a Perulia. So to kind of make up for that, I tried to stack my deck with hand traps that were going to be high impact if I did see them. So obviously we're seeing the Ash Blossoms, the Droll and Lockbirds, because Droll's crazy against like Mitsurugi, the Nibirus, the Imperms. Nibiru is really cool because like if you activate Nibiru and they have Ame on board, you just discard the Nibiru and it still resolves, tributes the whole board. The issue is like Ame comes back. If you have Ash, that also works. If you have Bell, that also works. I was playing a large stockpile of Bestials. I was playing 1 Baldrake, 2 Druisworm, 1 Magnemite, and 2 Serenir with the Lubellion and the Regained. A lot of you are probably asking why Serenir, and especially why more Serenir than Baldrake. My thought process is I only own 1 Bestial Lubellion, and I obviously want to see him if I can. So Magnemite obviously is essentially a Lubellion because he can search it. But Serenir, if you open just 2 Bestials, which happened a lot, and one of them is Serenir, you just summon Serenir, link him away, effect to put the Lubellion in grave, and then you make the other Bestial to the board, and then you just bring Lubellion out. So it's like, if you really squint, it's another copy of Lubellion. Again, I was just trying to make my 1 copy of Lubellion work, and this came up a couple of times, actually. So I was pretty pleased with the performance. The 1 Dotscaper, going into future events, I am cutting Dotscaper. As we saw, Malice did get top 4 from Jeff Jones' list, and he's not running Dotscaper, and I definitely intend to follow suit in that. I hate this card, and I'm sure every other Malice player that plays Dot can attest to this. This card finds its way into all of our hands, and it's so frustrating. In round 5, when I was going against one of the mirror matches, Dotscaper kept finding its way into my opponent's hand. She just kept normal summoning Dotscaper, and I'm like, oh my god, not like this. This fucker is gotta go. As for like the Malice names, I'm still just running 2 Cat, 3 Mouse, 3 Rabbit. I was just until like the last day before I submitted my deck list, I was playing 1 Cat still, but there were so many moments where like the second Cat does just come up. You want to see names as much as possible, and a Malice name plus a Bestial is just full combo, even if that Malice name is just Chessie Cat. So we absolutely just wanted to see more names, and I just wasn't ever seeing names with only 1 Cat. The second Cat does happen to just obviously increase the odds. But to this day, I'm still not going to bring it to 3. I did decide to run Template Skipper. This card reads crazy, and it did come up pretty crazy. The issue I ran into was it's a very similar scenario to Dotscaper, whereas at the end of the day, it is not a Malice name until obviously it resolves its effect. There were several times where I was seeing this card, but I had no other Malice name in my hand, so he was essentially just a brick. So it's like one of those scenarios where it's like, this card's bad unless it resolves, and sometimes it just never resolved. So going forward, as much as I liked this card, when it actually performed, it just wasn't enough, so I will be cutting this card. It did create some really cool interactions, so obviously when it banishes a Cyberse monster, it copies that monster's name, which means it becomes a Malice monster, so you can like use this card, banish Rabbit, Rabbit come back, Rabbit set, and then you activate the trap card Rabbit set, and you can banish Skipper because Skipper's name is Malice White Rabbit. So it's like, it creates some really cool interactions for sure. But overall, like it did not perform as well as I would have hoped. It performed like okay, but there were a couple of games where I saw one, if not both of this in my hand in the opening hand, and honestly, you don't really want to see it in the opening hand. You want to find it with Sign It Mining or draw into it. So just, yeah, we will be cutting it. And then at the end of the day, I would just much rather have a Bestial in my hand than this guy if I'm going, especially if I'm going second. So I ended up like siding him out going second, or even just post game, I sided him out almost every time, which is just kind of a sign that maybe I don't need him. We're playing Called By in the main. There's not like a whole lot of scenarios that hand traps hurt. Like Bell probably hurts the most in most scenarios. But we are playing Called By in the main because I just didn't want to run it in the side. I wanted that extra slot in the side deck. Called By just kind of goes crazy in very specific scenarios. I used Called By in the mirror match, which was really cool. Obviously, Called By is just another chance to out Lancia post game or post side, so that was nice. One Signet Mining. Signet Mining was just kind of there as like an extra name. Like one could argue just run the third cat, but third cat is cat, and cat is like kind of the worst one if not accompanied with another Malice monster, and it's also not that great if you don't have a Bestial in hand. Whereas Signet Mining can be any one of the names. It could also just be Template Skipper, which is a further extension later in your combo. So Mining like had its purpose. Mining was also good if I saw Scaper in hand, which means I saw 2 1-ofs in my opening hand, which was unfortunate, but there were 2 different instances where I went Signet Mining, discard Dotscaper, and my opponent was like, oh, that's crazy. So yeah, Signet Mining is like good. I just didn't want to run it at more than 1 copy just because like most scenarios, I don't really need this. The one Gold Sark, I'm iffy on Gold Sark because like in one scenario, Gold Sark is just like full Malice combo. But on the other hand, I sided this out post side every time and it never went back in. So if I went game 1, I won the game. Game 2, I sided out. Game 2, I still lose regardless. Game 3, I'm not putting it back in. Just this card is a dead card in your hand if Lancia is activated. So I don't know. I'm considering cutting it, but at the end of the day, like it's still useful if you don't see a Malice name. But I'm also just cutting it in 2 of my 3 games anyways, so I'm like, maybe just cut it entirely. Kind of iffy on that. 3 of the field spell still. I decided not to run Terraforming. I just felt like Terraforming was playing into Droll when I didn't need to play into Droll. But also, like, Terraforming, I'm not playing, like, the Striker cards, so I don't need, like, an abundance of spell cards in my deck. We are playing 2 talents. I would play 3 if I owned the 3rd copy. The 3 Imperm still, and then 1 of each of the trap. Extra deck is pretty run-of-the-mill. We're running Bow, Access Code, Firewall Haggard, IP, Griffin, Phoenix, Lingaribo, Decoder, the 3 Malice names, Little Knight, and Splash Mage. The only one that I'm like doing a little differently, and it's not super like out of this realm different because other Malice decks are playing this, is Dark. If you're going second and you just summon Dark after you've like expended your opponent's resources and you don't have like a Malice name in hand, you can just go Dark, take their Dormouse and use their Dormouse to give yourself full combo essentially. I also use this in the mirror match to summon their White Binder to my field, and then I use White Binder and him to make Access Code, and then I just proceeded to wipe their board. Just overall, like, Dark's really cool in the mirror. I probably will still end up cutting Dark because I do in future iterations of the deck plan on running Metaltronus, which means I need the slot for like a detonator like Jeff did. And so Dark is like kind of like the least impactful because we are not seeing any like real Darks against the Ryziel matchup, except for like Necroquip. I at one time in one of my regional flights summoned Dark, took their Necroquip, made Little Knight. That felt iffy, but it is what it is. Side deck, we're running 3 Lancia because Lancia is just like the best option against Malice right now. You could run Meows. I don't own Meows. We are running 3 Shifter. I sided this in 3 or 4 times, only saw him once. It actually won me a game because I just activate Shifter in the draw phase and my opponent just looks at his hand and goes, that's really unfortunate. Turns out he only saw Fiendsmith stuff in his opening hand. Bell was great on paper. Bell never came up. There was one time where I opened Bell and she just did not do anything. So going forward, I will be cutting Bell, but Bell in the mirror match is crazy because you can Bell like White Binder. You can Bell the field spell, which means they don't have the field spell on their end board. Bell is pretty good against like Mitsurugi when they try to come back, or you can use it on the quick play. You can also just like Bell Fiendsmith stuff like Sequence or Engraver. So like there's application with Bell, but it's like not impactful enough, so I probably am going to be cutting Bell. We're running 2 Crossout. I didn't need the 3rd one most times. Crossout was pretty good against Lancia. Going forward, I'm just going to be cutting Crossout Designator. I think the play with Malice right now is to play cards that if you do get hit with Lancia, you can just kind of wall up in a weird scenario and try and survive a turn. So crossout is just like, yeah, I can play this and try to play through it, or I can play other cards that will just kind of keep me alive until I can actually crack back. And crossout, just like, I don't know. Crossout was cool against the mirror. I activated crossout when they went Dormouse, and I declared Dormouse, which means you're counting out Dormouse's both effects, essentially. She's not going to be able to bring herself back in the banish effect, and she's not going to be able to banish from deck. So it was really cool against the mirror, but like, I'm probably just cutting crossout. We're running one Duster as a search target for talents, or I mean thrust, because there's plenty of back row scenarios right now where like Duster just goes crazy. You're forcing interaction. Obviously, the Raziel matchup, you can just like out their back row, which is usually like imperms, or if you're post side, then maybe like strikes, but obviously gets out the cross. Against Malice, you get rid of the field spell, so you don't have to target the Malice Link monsters with attacks, but also it forces them to either use their trap cards there or they lose them. So Duster is just pretty good. Thrust, I'm only playing 2. I don't like running 3 of Thrust because that means I'm probably going to end up seeing more than 1 Thrust, but overall, you could put this to 3. And then the D-Barrier. D-Barrier is, like, interesting. So before the tournament, I considered cutting D-Barrier because it doesn't do a whole lot if you really think about it. Like, oh, D-Barrier is crazy against Raziel because they're an Xyz deck. Yeah, until they go into Fiendsmith stuff, and you still got to break through a Desiree that can't be targeted. But, and like, so a lot of people would make the argument like, oh, well, Fiendsmith's going into Exciton, well, so you just declare Xyz and they can't go Fiendsmith. A lot of Raziel players cut Exciton and just went Moon because of D-Barrier. D-Barrier can be like decent against the Mitsurugi build because I would rather play against a Detonator than an Ame personally, or a Futso. But I don't know. I considered cutting this. It actually, when it resolved, won me games. So, like, obviously, it's still good in some scenarios, but, like, it's teetering, to say the least. And that's really it for my YCS Orlando experience. It was my first YCS. I had a lot of fun. And like I said, unlike a lot of regionals where I kind of bubbled out, I didn't end up getting my invite. I'm actually really pumped to jump into the next tournament. I will not be at YCS Houston or YCS Rhode Island, I think is what it is. I probably won't be at another regional for at least a couple of months. And after Maze comes out, like, playing Malice gets a lot harder because 7th Ascension can search Lancia. So it's going to be, like, really just interesting going forward for my competitive, like, career, I guess I could say. Just because, like, things get a little more difficult. I'm trying to save to move into a bigger home. You've all been seeing the same background for about 3 years now. Trying to save to get into a bigger home with my fiance. And so trying not to spend a bunch of money on shiny cardboard. That being said, I do stream randomly. And when I'm streaming, there is a donation option. So if you all want to further support the channel, it's always appreciated. But if you want to support the channel, don't forget to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already and you like competitive-based content, but also comment below if you were at YCS Orlando and how you did. But with that, I'll see you all in the next video. See ya.